This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
This is absolute tosh.
Oh, hello.
Okay, first email. Says, from Wendy, says, John Bercow joined the Labour Party. I can't believe it. It's not like he was Labour all along anyway from his performances as Speaker. And then there's an exclamation mark, as though that's proof. He wasn't Labour all along, he was Conservative all along. Just because he held the government to account, which was his job, does not mean to say he's a traitor, any more than High Court judges are traitors for upholding the law. Wendy, exclamation mark. So here's the story. The former Tory MP and Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, has announced that he has switched his political allegiance to the Labour Party. You remember the Labour Party, don't you?
No.
They used to be a thing. Bercow says that he regards today's Conservative Party as reactionary, populist, nationalistic and sometimes even xenophobic. 4 out of 4. Bercow stepped down as Speaker in 2019 after 10 whole years, says he's joined the Labour Party a few weeks ago because he now shares its values and sees it as the only means to removing the current Tory government from office. Well, only if they get together with all of the other left-leaning parties. Because otherwise it's the left, as usual, forming a circular shooting squad and killing each other. And then the Conservative Party just steps over their prone form and becomes a majority leading from a minority. Does that make sense? A little bit. Bercow said, I am motivated by support for equality, social justice and internationalism. That is the Labour brand, he says. OK. Is it? He said, the conclusion I have what did you say? He said, the conclusion I have reached is that the government needs to be replaced. The reality is that the Labour Party is the only vehicle that can achieve that objective. There is no other credible option, he said. Bercow says that despite Johnson's professed commitment to levelling up, levelling up. I mean, does anybody actually buy that?
No.
Levelling up, that's what he's going to do. Sure. He says Boris has absolutely no interest in those less privileged than himself. If you had to lay money on one or the other being true, that Boris Johnson was absolutely determined to level up and to play oh God, my brain's faded already, and it's only 5-6 minutes into the show.
Oh, no.
If you had to lay a bet one way or the other, Boris Johnson was interested in the little people, not leprechauns, or had absolutely no interest in the little people, which would you bet? If you had to bet every penny you had on you right now. Exactly. People who are deep in the cult need not answer. I know what your answer is. Bercow says that despite Johnson's professed commitment to levelling up, Johnson has no interest at all in those less privileged than himself. He also describes as utterly shameful the decision to cut international aid. He says he's a successful campaigner but a lousy governor. I mean, are there any faults in any of this so far? Bercow says, I don't think he has any vision of a more equitable society, any thirst for social mobility, or any passion to better the lot of people less fortunate than he is. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think increasingly people are sick of lies, sick of empty slogans, sick of a failure to deliver. Any complaints so far? The Tories' unexpected loss of Chesham and Amersham. I don't know if it was that unexpected. We can get into it if you like. That seat where you remember the Liberal Democrats, surely?
No.
Yeah, they used to be a thing too. The Liberal Democrats overturned the majority of 16,000 and raised serious questions among Tory MPs and activists over whether Johnson can appeal to both working-class voters behind the, quotes, red wall and those in more prosperous southern shires. And I have multiple theories. Referring to the by-election shock, Bercow said that he believed many traditional Tories were dismayed by the Johnson government failure to match actions with words. and cited the recent decisions to limit education catch-up funding and to cut the international aid budget as examples of where his priorities lay. Well, if you leave the international aid budget out, because there is, people just don't like, let's be real about it, people don't like foreigners. It's a survival mechanism. Not just human beings, but all animals, probably plants as well. We don't instinctively like those who don't walk, talk and squawk exactly like us. So leave the international aid part out. How about levelling up the educational attainment of children? Fishy Sunak actually said that, I haven't got money for everything, you know. People came to him, with their hands out. Please, sir, can we have some more? Some more education, please, sir. And he said, I can't afford everything, you know. If schools were run by Serco, he'd have the money. Bercow said he believed many traditional Tories were dismayed by the Johnson government's failure to match action with words. He said, I think what the by-election result tells us is there is very considerable distrust on the part of voters in the south of England of this government. I don't accept the thesis that this was an anti-HS2 vote. I don't really either. I mean, people have been against, right-thinking people all over the country have been against this silly HS2 thing since the moment it was, since the moment the idea was brought up. Of course we don't blooming need it. We didn't need it before COVID, and we absolutely, totally, and certainly don't need it now. Now that people have discovered, the phone to take business meetings, or video calls, Zoom, and all that stuff. I mean, they're not building that railway at a cost of, I think it's probably going to be the most expensive railway in the world when they've actually finished it. It might already be that. We seem utterly incapable of building anything for less than £100 billion. But they didn't build it for tourists, did they? There's no great desire to get from Birmingham to London or vice versa from tourism, so it's for business people. So they could have business meetings. But why would you do that when you can just pick up the bloomin' phone? So we didn't need it before COVID, and we absolutely, totally, and certainly don't need it now. I mean, have you been on a train or a bus lately? There ain't nobody on them. The only person on a train these days is the person that's in the cab driving it. Hundreds of billions of pounds just chucked away. I've got theories about that too. Oh, so much to pack in. He says, I don't accept the thesis this was an anti-HS2 vote. I think that it's very convenient for the government to think that, but it suffers from the disadvantage of being wrong. I love this guy. Suffers from the disadvantage of being wrong. Excellent work, John Bercow. He says, I think people in very large numbers are disappointed. They're not angry. Well, they are angry, but they're also disappointed. He says, in some cases, disgusted.
Disgusting.
By this government and what it's done. He reserved some of his most savage criticisms for the way the current government treats Parliament, suggesting that he believes it constantly hides the truth from MPs.
Liar!
Exactly. Well, there's that video that's going around Twitter. He's got up to about, 23 million views now? I keep tweeting it every day. Every day it comes into my Twitter feed, and I think, yeah, all right, then I'll tweet that. If people haven't seen it, you should watch it immediately, if not straight away. It's lies after lie after lie after lie after lie. He says, I regard the government's treatment of Parliament as a disgrace. I believe the truth matters, says John Bercow. Well, we used to believe that too, until we all got sucked into a culture war. And now it's like two religions battling it out, where we've all joined a blooming cult in this country. Or half of us, 46% of us have, anyway. He says there is a growing, extensive and incontrovertible evidence. There is growing, extensive and incontrovertible evidence that the government is disrespecting Parliament, telling untruths to Parliament.
Liar!
And bypassing Parliament. That is wrong, he said. Some people may not immediately think it matters, but it does. It's a slow burn issue. Yeah, it's like when a government restricts the people's ability to protest against it. Or it restricts your ability to walk about the place without being surveilled by CCTV 24 hours a day. And people will immediately think, oh, well, if you haven't done nothing wrong, then you're perfectly all right then, aren't you? But the problem with that is that what constitutes wrong tends to change from year to year. Asked if he believed that Labour would, under Keir Starmer, oust the Tories, Bercow was unsure. He said, yeah. I am, however, hopeful, he says, because I observed Starmer at close quarters from the Speaker's chair. He may not be Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, but he is decent, honourable, and intelligent, and he came into politics as a public service. Yeah, there's a big difference there, I think. I think that that's probably true. I think that Keir Starmer, he didn't come because he wanted to be a political rock star, did he? He's not that kind of person at all, Keir Starmer. He's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for?
Boring!
Yeah, that's it. He's a little bit boring. Maybe we need boring. I mean, they got boring in America after that kaleidoscopic clown show they had for a little while there.
I can be more presidential than anybody.
And then we got Sleepy Joe, who's turning out to be one of the most transformative presidents in the history of America. So they got there boring, and it turned out not to be that boring at all. Just a little bit, just like a tremendous relief all round. That you didn't wake up in the morning and look at Twitter and think, I still don't miss you, Donny. Still not missing you. He says he may not be Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, Keir Starmer, but he's decent, honourable and intelligent and came into politics as a public service. I believe that Keir Starmer is motivated by an earnest and consuming desire to better the lot of the vast majority of the people in this country who do not enjoy the privileges that he does. Yeah, and could you honestly say that of Boris Johnson? That he has an earnest and consuming desire for anything, let alone to better the lot of the vast majority of the people in this country who do not enjoy the privileges that he does. Honestly, even you cult fans out there, could you say that of the Bodge? I rest my face.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Are you trying to be funny? Because I'm all out of laughs.
Everybody's all out of laughs. There are no more laughs. Lynn emails, have you not worked it out yet? The only reason the G7 was in Cornwall was that Boris and family could have a holiday. Well, his dad wrote in a paper that the reason that they went to the G7, the G7 went to Cornwall, was where Boris used to take his holidays as a child. And I wouldn't be remotely surprised if that was true. I mean, that's his dad said that. It was a stupid idea. I mean, Cornwall is, I would expect, on the verge of a major virus outbreak. Would anybody bet against it? That's because all of these people went through London to go to Cornwall. And I know they went through London because I was barged off the road by one of their motorcades coming here last weekend. Motorcycle outriders came around the corner, stopped me dead in my tracks, pushed me over to the other side of the road, and this giant cavalcade of cars with blue lights flashing came up and disgorged into a hotel just around the corner here. I do believe one of them was Ursula von der Leyen. So they came through London, went to Cornwall, and then came from Cornwall back to London, and then out to wherever it is that they went. How ridiculous was that? I mean, if you're trying to impress upon the world that Britain is open for business, then showing them some random beach that could be absolutely anywhere isn't going to do it. You want to show them in front of the wheel or Big Ben or something like that, something that people abroad recognise. Derek texts, in all interviews, Matt Hancock must be asked how much longer he'll be Health Secretary if Boris thinks he's hopeless. Well, Boris Johnson said apparently that Matt Hancock was bleeping hopeless, which is, I don't know, it's just about right.
Correct.
Yeah, that's about right. And then he said he had complete confidence in him. Well, so he has complete confidence in somebody he thinks is bleeping hopeless, which means that we should not have any confidence in the man who has confidence in somebody who he thinks is bleeping hopeless. Of course, Matt Hancock, when he's asked about that, he'll say something like, "Oh, I don't understand. I don't recognise those figures." Robert emails, Boris was really clever, you know. Now that John Bercow isn't in the House of Lords, he is free to stand for Parliament again, this time for the Labour Party. Boris was really clever. I should have stopped there. Skipton. Hello, Robert. Hello, Robert. One moment, please. Yes, Robert.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can now.
Oh, right. I'm just saying, good evening, enjoy the show.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, I think the reason that our former speaker has decided to throw in his lot with Labour is probably his best bet and maybe even a promise of a lordship at some point in the future.
Yeah, that's a bit of a lame argument, really.
No, it's not.
Well, it is.
No,
He
it's not.
specifically said that that's not true.
Well, of course he has. I mean, if there's anybody who's into self-aggrandizement, it's John Bercow.
Well, it's Boris Johnson and all of the cavalcade of clowns that are around him. You don't have to meet him. I don't have to meet him any more than I've got to meet any more than I have to meet Jacob Rees-Mogg to know what they're like.
Well, unfortunately, I have, and I know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm afraid.
Right, well, I bet he has positive things to say about you too, Robert. Really, that's the only reason that he has said negative things about your cult favourite, the dear leader, is because he's angling for a seat in the House of Lords. I mean, this is desperate stuff, people. Just address all of the things that he's said and tell me that they're not true. But no, we want to dismiss it because we're engaged in a culture war. You forgot to tell me about statues, Robert. Maybe he took down a picture of the Queen. John tweets, has Bercow committed political suicide? Surely he too can see the Labour Party is already halfway down the slippery slope to oblivion. And I like the man, says John. Well, I think the death of the Labour Party is, or the reports of it are somewhat premature. I mean, they weren't going to win in Amersham. Of course they weren't. It's not their patch. Twee suburbia is not Labour's heartland, is it? That's inner cities and areas of traditional deprivation is where Labour used to predominate. Before we became, obsessed with blooming Brexit and statues and portraits of the Queen and trying to whitewash the history of this country so that, slavery never happened. You wouldn't expect the Labour Party to do well, but you probably would expect the Liberal Democrats to do well because that's their sort of area. I think people voted for not the Conservative Party. No, they weren't going to vote Labour because that's not who they are in Amersham. Shirley says, I think Bercow would make a wonderful leader of the Labour Party, far better than the current bore we have at the helm. Well, there is something to say for boring. I mean, Biden is boring. A little bit. I mean, unless you have read some of the things that he's actually proposing and is doing, then they seem pretty radical. But before he became president, you thought, wow, it's a bit dull, isn't he? I mean, we're used to this, this clown show. Can't we have somebody entertaining? I mean, he's the absolute opposite of you-know-who.
I'm president! Can you believe it?
No, we're still stunned. So I think, there's a place for boring. But boring is what it used to be like in politics. Remember? Before the arm-waving inflatable tubes took over. Kath, and as for Bercow being the leader of the Labour Party, no, we need somebody a little more. I mean, I love the way his way with the English language. It's great. I mean, that phrase there. Let's see if I can pull it out. Where is it? Oh, yeah, right. I think that it is very convenient for the government, this blaming it on HS2, but it suffers from the disadvantage of being wrong. Suffers from the disadvantage. That's great. I mean, that is verbal gymnastics, that is. But that's not really the kind of person that you would expect to run the Labour Party. He's a little bit highfalutin. I mean, I know that Tony Blair wasn't a gore-blimey, dirty fingernail type, but somebody a little more salt of the earth, just a little, would be good. On that subject, Kath says, I wonder if Rory Stewart will be next to join the Labour Party. In other news, I planted 20 flower plants today. I don't know if the two are related, says Kath. I don't really get the reference, but I expect not. And I also expect that Rory Stewart will not be next to join the Labour Party. And if he was, again, a little bit too, highfalutin. Can we have a little less Eton running the country, please? They don't seem to be doing a very good job.
Affirmative.
Maybe being handed everything on a plate at a very young age isn't good preparation for, running the country, or having any sort of empathy for those who have not also been handed everything on a plate. Thinking about nobody in particular.
You're better informed than I am. I don't know anything.
Yeah, that guy, especially. I don't know anything. Roger texts, Nick, now that the government has got a kicking at Amersham, do we think that the Lib Dems are capable of sorting themselves out and potentially being shoehorned into number 10 at the next general election?
No.
Well, anything's possible, but I doubt it. But I suspect that it is possible to get a coalition into number 10 at the next general election. If they all come together as a team, left-leaning parties, then it just might work out that the majority of the people in this country might have their voices heard rather than a minority putting a government into power with absolute, complete and total control on a minority vote, which doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, who are they actually running the country on behalf of? It's not even the minority of the people that voted them there, is it? I mean, the poor people of the North, how's it going for you so far? For instance, Linda says, 100% ecstatic. John Bercow is saying it as it damn well is, says Linda. I was a little bit rude there, Linda, but borderline language there. Please clean it up a little bit. And Darryl says, I think it's great that the government wants to level up the country because then in winter no places will get flooded. Well, actually in winter everywhere will get flooded. If they level everything up, we'll all get flooded under the deluge, which I think it's winter now. Blooming freezing outside. And I was thinking, oh, that's it, it's over. This summer is rubbish. And then I remembered that, it's around about now that Glastonbury would ordinarily have occurred. And you know what the weather's like at Glastonbury? Pretty much always, year after year after year. It's freezing blooming cold and pouring down with rain. So it's actually not a surprise at all. If that glorious weather had continued, that would have been a surprise. It's weird, isn't it? Every year, summer is often rubbish, and it comes as a shock every single year. We got the memory of goldfish.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
What number are you calling from?
Thanks for asking. It's 0345 6060 973. Tony texts, I bet HS2 will cost the same as the Track and Trace app when it's all said and done. It's already cost way more than that, Tony. I mean, the Track and Trace, the testing app, that's up to, what, 32 billion, isn't it, Bodge?
Contact tracing.
You're never going to get it. Meanwhile, HS2 is, I think, up to 100 billion so far, isn't it? 100 billion pounds, some staggering amount like that. That's an amount that's so large I don't even know what it is. How many zeros on 100 billion pounds? I think all of them. All of the zeros. Meanwhile, Sam says, I work for the railways as a train driver. HS2 is built because existing lines are at capacity. If we want to transport more people, it's easy to do via rail, especially for government eco targets. The UK must free up more capacity on existing lines. Well, a few things there, Sam. First off...
Warning!
You're about to get replaced by a robot.
Affirmative.
HS2 is built because existing lines are at capacity. Well, they were for the old way of life, but we've walked into a new era now. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's nobody on the trains anymore. There's nobody on the trains, and there's nobody on the buses, and there's barely anybody on the roads anymore. It's because people ain't travelling no more. HS2 is for business persons. It's not for tourists. Business people go from Birmingham to London, and London to Birmingham in order to have business meetings with other business people. But since COVID's come along, business people have realised that it's actually much more efficient to have a business meeting on Zoom or some other similar app. Because if you have an hour-long meeting at your place in Birmingham with a prospective client in London, then if you do it on Zoom, it'll take you an hour. A 60-minute meeting takes 60 minutes on Zoom. But if you go from Birmingham to London to have that 60-minute meeting, it'll take you all day. It makes no sense. But people used to do it because they thought, you've got to be in the room, and it's very, very important to make eye contact and shake hands and, all that guff that nobody wants to do anymore, for fear of catching a major disease. So the whole point that the HS2 is predicated on an argument that doesn't exist anymore. And as for government eco-targets, we're just signed a huge and tremendous, tiny, insignificant trade deal with Australia. We want to import sweets from the other side of the world. Does that sound eco to you?
No.
Southampton, hello, Simon.
I never even heard of a Tim Tam. What is that?
A tin can?
No, a Tim Tam. Apparently it's one of our favourites. What we get from Australia. Tim Tam biscuits.
Never heard of it.
No, nor have I. Good evening, Nick. I've got a couple of things for you. I'm a taxi driver, as you possibly know. I had a couple of young couple in the car last night who were going home, and they went back to their parents' farm. There's a lot of, where I live, there's a lot of big posh houses and land and a lot of old money.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was the parents' farm they were going back to, and we got onto the subject of politics, and I had to be a bit careful because I was in my professional capacity, but they were Tory, and
right.
We got onto the subject of different bits and pieces, and it was like listening to LBC, because the two things that they sort of clung to was, one, if Jeremy Corbyn got into power, we'd have had a disastrous reaction to the virus.
Not like the success that we've had, eh, Bodge?
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah, he's been a tremendous success.
Yeah, I pointed that out to them, but it didn't wash. And the other thing that was we got onto universal basic income. But it didn't matter which angle I threw at them, and all the positives, they could not get past. Because people will just take the money and they won't bother doing anything anymore. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Some will create businesses. Some will do X, Y, and Z. But yeah, your point is right. That was the only concern they had, that people would tell this is what you're up against. This mindset is so stagnant and so immovable. And so if you are that way inclined, I just don't know what will get through, because it's like so Tories are always looking for solutions that are at the expense of others, right? Well, if you're a Tory, there's always going to be a victim somewhere. Whereas if you're anything on the left, then it's more inclusive, right? Everybody wants to come along for the ride. Yeah, rich people, poor people, we're all coming along for the same ride, right? Not Tories. There's always got to be.
Well, I don't know about. I think that you make the difference is not Tory and Labour. It's people who are on the right and those who aren't. People who have empathy and those who think that because people aren't as lucky as they are, then it's somehow their fault.
Yeah. All right, let's rephrase it then. So on the right is always got to be at someone's expense. And on the left is for everybody. Now, I don't know about you. Well, I'm sure I do know, about your opinion on this, but I know which side of that I'd rather be on, because I'm not as selfish, inconsiderate. I've got to stop because I'm going to say something.
Let me ask you a question about your work, Simon. Have you got one of those switches in the back of your cab that turns off the volume from the driver?
Only because I put it in. Yeah, I put an intercom in my own vehicle.
Right.
So yeah, I've got all that. And the thing is if it's particularly bad, that stuff that I don't want to hear, then because I've got a partition, which again I put in myself.
Right.
I'm clever boy.
You can turn them off, and vice versa.
Yeah, but the thing is, if they need to get my attention, then I was sort of thinking, what am I going to do about this? Because it's all very well me having the control of this, but if they want to get my attention, so I put a wireless doorbell in the back. So I say to them now, right, I've got a bit of interference on the intercoms. I'm going to switch it off. Yeah. If you want to get my attention, press the doorbell.
Yeah, give us a bell. All right, good work. Thanks a lot, Simon. 0345 6060 973. Edward texts, I'm not a fan of Keir Starmer, but I will talk him up if he puts me in the House of Lords. I'm not a fan of Keir Starmer, but I will talk him up if he puts me in the House of Lords. All that daily allowance to buy me a life of happiness. It has to be Andy Burnham for Labour leader for me, says Edward. So we've sort of latched onto this idea that all John Bercow wants is to a vapour lock onto anybody that could get him into the House of Lords and big them up until he gets his way. What an absolutely ludicrous thing to think. This says, Ricky tweets, hey, Ricky, you're so fine, blah, 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 hey, Ricky. Blah, blah, blah. My lips aren't keeping up with my brain. Bercow was the first speaker not to be sent to the Lords in over 200 years. If Bodger had used his brain cell, he would have sent Bercow to the Lords as a crossbencher and no one would have heard of him again. Johnson is the idiot's thinking man. Actually, yes, I mean, that was a point that I was going to come to later. I'll flesh that out a little bit later, when we get there. That's forthcoming attractions. Isn't it exciting? Isn't it exciting?
No.
Thank you. 0345 6060 973. Let's have a call in Christchurch. Phil.
Hello. The political parties
oh, God, not you
represent different people these days.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Well, there's no change with the Liberal Democrats. They basically pretend are all things to all people, aren't they, basically? So no change there. But the Conservatives now represent the working class.
In what way?
Well, Johnson helps the working class. He's helped people with the furlough and all that.
In what way?
And, well, during the pandemic, he paid 80% of people's wages and all that.
Right. You think that's helping? He did that to help working class rather than to keep the country ticking over?
Well, if we'd had Corbyn in, he'd have bankrupted the country and he wouldn't have been able to deal with a virus pandemic in the first place, would he?
Well, what makes you think that, though, Phil?
Well,
I mean, how is this not bankrupted the country already?
If he had such a huge spending list, he would have just squandered all the money, wouldn't he?
Squandered all the money? You think he would have spent $32 billion on a test and trace system that doesn't work? You'd think he would have given £108 million contracts hand over fist to companies that didn't exist the previous week and only have a telephone to call their own, but a hotline to Matt Hancock's personal phone. Is that what you think?
In the political parties, so there's more clarity.
I turned you down there because you were just yelling at me. I missed everything that you just said. Never mind.
We should call the Conservatives the working class and the Labour the shirking class.
Right, okay. This is another guy with material. Are you out yet?
Yeah.
Yes. Mark him down. Put a big exclamation mark next to that guy's name. Not again. Every day with that. Every day. 0345 6060 973. Gary says, in the era of celebrity politics, Burko is not the best possible chap to fight Bodger at the dispatch box. He can just shout order at him every Wednesday, and I bet you people will vote for him. Burko for president. Yeah, I don't think he's the best possible person to fight Bodger at the dispatch box either. It has to be somebody who can cut through a bit more. I mean, maybe Keir Starmer can do it, but he hasn't shown evidence of that so far. I mean, he may be able to poke the bodge with, rapier-like questions, but it doesn't really work, does it? You've got to cut through. I think you need somebody a bit more salt of the earth. Somebody who is the opposite of all of that, all of that. That thin act that Bodger's got. You need somebody to be able to prick it. And I'm not sure somebody as polite as Keir Starmer is it. I think you need less a rapier and more a mallet. 0345 6060 973. And yesterday I said that you'll never guess what Ian, middle name Smith, has suggested that we use going forward. God, I hate that phrase. And I forgot. Well, I both forgot and then ran out of time. I'm very bad at my job, so I'll do that in a minute. You will be stunned.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Nick Abbott.
Right, so what are we doing?
Given we're doing a radio show, I'll take this call and then I'll tell you about Ian, middle name Smith. Haringey. Hello, Claire. Oh, Claire. Too late. Right, so this should give warning bells ringing in your mind. Boris Johnson has said that a path through the thicket of burdensome and restrictive regulation must be cleared to fulfil the potentials of Brexit.
Warning, warning.
See, this has been part of the plan all along. They've been telling us how these regulations are holding us back. Oh, if only we can be free of regulations, then all of our lives will be better, like we've always dreamed they would be. Small fact, regulations are for our protection. Regulations are about not allowing poison in food and pollution in the water and the safety of electrical goods and the treatment of animals and restrictions on financial organisations ripping us off. Those restrictions make it more expensive to do business. They impact the bottom line, but they keep us safe and stop financial finaglers from stealing our money. So when the Tories say we should reduce red tape, it's not for our benefit. It's for the benefit of the donor class, and we should be very suspicious of anyone who suggests such a thing. In other news, the man who was responsible for an overhaul of the benefits system that left tens of thousands struggling to cope, whose time in Cabinet led to the introduction of the bedroom tax, 0 hours contracts, universal credit and the benefits sanctions, wants us to believe that he has our best interests at heart. A report from the comically named Task Force on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, TIGRR, led by Ian Duncan Smith, which is not a double-barrel name, by the way. He just insists on his middle name, which is why I call him Ian, middle name Smith. Ian Smith sounds a bit down market, really, doesn't it? So he's not Ian Smith, he's Ian Duncan Smith. Ugh. He's described Brexit as a one-off opportunity to reduce red tape and set out a new regulatory framework. The task force set out more than 100 recommendations, which include the authorisation of GM foods.
Oh, no.
Yes, to increase crop yields. And the return of, and here it is, get ready, he wants the return of imperial measurements.
What?
That's right, you heard me correctly. He suggests a return to imperial measurements, because either he likes multiplying by 12 and 14 instead of 10, Or he thinks it'll make the fan base of cultists happy because it'll remind them of the war, when bombs were falling out of the sky and the dead were piled up in the streets. You know, the good old days, when at least you could get your turnips by the ounce. Imperial measurements they want back. So says the Task Force on Innovation. You couldn't make it up, really, could you? The report claims the 1985 Weights and Measures Act, which makes it an offence for traders to use imperial without metric, has, quotes, long been identified and is as an example of overly prescriptive EU regulation. They say that the legislation should be amended to scrap such a requirement. Who is asking for that? Name the person that has even thought of it. God, they must be running out of culture war topics. I mean, they've done statues. We know they're more pro-bronzes than people. They've done history, which they are against if it reflects badly on us. They're against cancel culture, and they want to cancel anyone who disagrees with them. And now it's ounces, pounds, stones and quarts and hundredweights they want back. There's a well-known phrase that is occurring to me right now.
Well, the whole world's gone crazy.
Yeah. In a letter to the task force, the Prime Minister thanked them for these substantive plans that will really put a tiger, or tiger is probably how you pronounce it, in the tank of British business. And that's why they called it the Task Force on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, TIGRR, Tiger, just so that Bodger could crack that, put a tiger in the tank of British businesses. You remember the old ad? Anybody under the age of 40 is going, what ad, Grandad? Grandad? Why, you little... Put a tiger in your tank. It's a joke, no?
No.
Green Party peer Natalie Bennett said that cutting red tape gave us Grenfell Tower, the 2007 financial crisis, and falling work standards. She tweeted, when you hear red tape, think controls that protect us and control corporations, because that's what they are. But the cultists are all in on that cutting the red tape thing because they think that that's what's holding them back. It's the only thing that's saving you. It's the only thing that's protecting you from one moment of your life to the next. Red tape. And, by the way, since we've left the European Union, that bonfire of red tape has turned into a mountain of it that we had to climb over every time we want to do business with our close personal neighbours. Let's see if I can squeeze one in before the news. Liverpool. Hello, Brendan.
Cheers, mate. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, just on your subject of overrunning costs of everything that various governments in the past have overseen. You know, you're saying we can't do big projects.
Well, not for less than £100 million, we can't. £1 billion,
yeah, exactly.
£100 billion.
Do you recall the new Royal Yacht Britannia that we've managed to do without for the past 10 or 15 years?
Yeah.
It's going to cost 200 million quid.
Brendan, if they tell us it's going to cost 200 million, then you can be absolutely certain it'll be 500 million.
Well, wait till you hear this, right? The Titanic cost 1.5 million back in 1910 or something, which extrapolated to the present day will be 140 or 160 million. So even if they've got it massively wrong and it's more like 200 million, can you imagine the Queen's yacht is going to be as big as the Titanic?
Yeah, well, the Queen, God bless her, actually sank Bodger's plan because he wanted to build it under the guise of giving it to the Queen, as a present for having lasted so long. But the Queen said, no, I don't want it. Good for you, Her Majesty.
Has it been scuppered, if you forgive the pun? Has it been scuppered?
No, he's going to build it anyway. He just doesn't get to call it the Queen's yacht. He's going to have to own it himself, which is actually the reason for doing it. Bodger wants a holiday on a yacht. It can't possibly be to improve trade because the last yacht that we had didn't do that at all, not one iota. It did not improve our trading relation with any company or country in the world. Because think about it. If somebody is important and rich enough to get invited on board, they're not the kind of person who would be impressed by a small yacht, which is what it's going to be. Billionaires have £500 million yachts. We are supposed to be building ours for 100 million, 200 million tops. So they're not going to be impressed. Apart from anything else, they're going to have to leave their 7-star hotel in the nice area of town, and they're going to have to get driven to the docks, where they would never normally go. That's the elbow of the city that they'll be in, that they would never contemplate visiting. I mean, the view is going to be awful apart from anything else. They're not going to set sail, are they? Because business people are going to have to, they'll be there for an hour and then they'll have to get driven back to their hotel again, where the meeting could have taken place anyway. They're not going to be impressed. So it's not for the Queen and it's not for trade, and that leaves whoever from the government is going to be able to take advantage of that boat. So it's Bodger's boat. Ugh. 0345 6060 973. Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
Yeah! Dude! Hang about, Nick. Listen. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is this, Nick, right?
Helen tweets, I think I just realised why it's been raining. There was tennis at the Queen's Club last week, and Wimbledon will be starting soon. It's always getting rained off the tennis. Yes, we do forget every single year. It's like we've never been in this country during the summer. It's always rubbish in June. I mean, every now and again we'll get a decent couple of weeks in the early spring, and then it'll be absolutely rubbish in June. I think June... this is just from memory, so this might not be right. This will be the only thing that is possibly incorrect that you'll hear on this programme. I think June has got a higher rainfall than any other month. I bet somebody wants to check that right now, if not straight away. And we forget every single year. We think, oh, no, it's raining and it's cold in June. How could that possibly be? It's always raining and cold in June. Glastonbury, Wimbledon, always raining and cold. Maybe July. I'll look ahead. I did the weather, the big thing about the weather yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat all that, but I'll just have a look. Oh, my God, look at that. No. Oh, that's terrible. It's going to be 57. This is in London on Monday. 57. Wow, that is terrible. And raining, of course. And then it's 60s for a week, and just touching 70 on the 1st of July. I mean, we're not allowed to go anywhere this year. It can't be another rubbish summer. Please, no. But anyway, you know me, I never complain.
Stop whining.
John emails. Now then, Nick, steady on, mate. You said the C word, coalition. A Lib Dem and coalition is anti-politics. Sounds like there's a missing word there. A Lib Dem and Labour coalition is anti-politics. Is it? I'm not sure that's true. I think it is. It's not anti-politics, it's politics. After the Chesham and Amersham election result, it would appear that many of the electorate have forgiven or forgotten that other naughty C, Clegg. Yeah, it's not your fault, Nick. Actually, Nick, it's all your fault.
Affirmative.
I think a Lib Dem and Labour and Greenie coalition is not anti-politics. That's like the very definition of politics, isn't it? Jim says, what a great result for the Tory party. Burko the Burke is to defect to Labour, as if poor Keir Starmer doesn't have enough problems. People have... I think that people who have joined the cult, just they round on anybody that they think should be on Boris Johnson's side, and if they're not, then they're a rat. It's like mafia speak. It's like we're living in a version of The Sopranos.
Absolutely.
And Natalie emails. God, it's rather a long email. 18 months ago, I visited the UK with my daughter. We were at King's Cross Station en route north. Saw Burko standing by a wall, studying the departure board. I decided to go up and say hello. I think he was initially wary, as it was when he was getting a lot of abuse for standing up to for the parliamentary process. Yeah, or as the cultists would term it, being a rat. It's like judges are the enemy of the people for actually, upholding the law. Anyway, it goes, but hearing our New Zealand accents and my expression of appreciation for his entertaining and powerful holding to account of the Tory government, he realised we were fans. We had a very nice little chat. He was charming and engaging. Great news for the Labour Party. He's a real asset. Yes, I think that's probably true. Whether he's the kind of voice that we need front and centre right now is debatable. Maybe we could just posh it down just a little bit. Just a tinge would be good. Jen says, I listened to your latest podcast with Carol and I nearly cried with laughter. How can anyone mispronounce the word coin? The funniest thing I've heard in a long time. Thanks a lot, Jen. Yeah, I do a podcast with Carol McGiffin.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which is called What's Your Problem with Nick and Carol?
Oh, right, yeah.
In which Carol McGiffin and I try to solve people's problems. If you want us to have a bash at your issue, send it to the following address. nickandcarol@global.com. nickandcarol@global.com. And prepare to be completely satisfied. There's actually over 100 of them up there. I couldn't believe how many that we've done. Is it 100 or 50? Anyway, it's a boatload. Loads and loads and loads. And people really like them. If you wish to be amused and you've got an hour, then try it. Ask for it by name on an internet near you. What's your problem with Nick and Carol? Let's have Walsall. Mick.
Hi, Nick.
Mick.
I'm all right. What I was going to say is the person I would vote for to win the Labour Party, and I would have voted for him if he was leader of the Labour Party at the last election, would have been Andy Burnham.
Right.
I like him. I think he's an honest bloke. And I think he actually cares. And I thought he was one of the best health secretaries we've ever had, to be honest.
Health secretaries?
Yeah, he was health secretary for a long time, wasn't he? And, oh, God almighty, his name I forget. Can't remember what he's... The one that goes around the country giving speeches.
What? Which one's that?
He was Prime Minister for as long as Maggie Thatcher.
Right. Well, you can't say his name.
Tony something.
Right.
I can't remember, to be honest. Okay. It's called getting old, my friend. Memory's not as sharp as it was.
Right. I refuse to believe that you can't remember his name, but anyway.
Yeah, I think Andy Burnham, if Andy Burnham had stood at the last election, I think... I'm not whether saying that the Tories wouldn't have won.
I think that he would have got I think that he would have got pummeled in the same way by the offshore billionaire press, just like Uncle Jezza got pummeled, and the public would have been turned against him in just the same way. Never mind. They wanted their man in, and now they may be thinking, well, maybe he's not our man anymore. Maybe we want somebody else. He's the sledgehammer that broke people's determination to vote the way they always used to, Boris Johnson. Burko's right about that, certainly. That he's a great he's great at electioneering, but not so great at actually running anything.
Well, Burko himself isn't his wife a Labour supporter?
Is he what?
So it wouldn't surprise me if he went to Labour.
Right, well, he did. Did you say his wife is a Labour supporter?
Yeah, his wife's a Labour supporter.
Well, what's that got to do with anything?
No, she's probably just badgered him into it.
Right.
Just imagine there for an argument in an election at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure that married couples actually have great long conversations about politics. I sort of doubt it. That would be colleagues, not husband and wife.
They sneak out the door and go and vote.
Right. Okay.
That's
Well.
probably what they do.
All right. Well, I can't go down that road, Mick. But anyway, I appreciate the call. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. If any married couples are thinking of having deep and engaging conversations about politics, warning! You probably shouldn't. Do what me and Carol do. Have yourself a safe word. Because any time that the politics rears its ugly head on the podcast that I do with Carol, we have we've each got a safe word. After the utterance of which we must immediately change the subject to a pre-arranged topic which has nothing to do with politics, because she and I agree on absolutely nothing whatsoever.
Yeah.
And, that's partly the charm of the podcast. We don't talk about politics, or almost never talk about COVID or anything that's going on at the moment. It's all, it's just funny stuff. What's your problem with Nick and Carol? If you've got the Global Player, by the way, then it's on there. And if you haven't got it, then you should get it. It does all of the radio stations we do, Heart and I won't start. I won't attempt to list them all because I've only got a brief 3-hour show. But all of the radio stations that we do, like this one, that's on there. And the podcasts, just boatloads of them. Download it from your favourite app store, Global Player, and ask for the podcast by name, What's Your Problem with Nick and Carol?
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
What's he got to be depressed about?
This. Joe emails, 100 billion is, and then he's written down this massive number. It's 1 followed by 14 zeros. Not 4, 14.
What?
Yeah. An unfathomable number, says Joe. Correct Amundo. I'll do it in seconds to give you some perspective. I know I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. 1 million seconds is about 12 days. And 1 million seconds, 12 days. How much more is a billion? Well, 1 billion seconds is 31.5 years. Yes. That's right. And we've spent so far, I think it's up to £100 billion on a railway line from here to Birmingham. The whole world's gone insane. This says, quick question, what are your thoughts on proportional representation voting? Where I live has been Tory since 1885. Right. I think that we should have it. It doesn't make any sense to continue being run like a dictatorship by a party that continues to get a minority of the votes of the people. What sense does that make? That's not democracy. It's the opposite of that. Sue says, when Boris was mayor, he presented my husband with a Good Citizen of Bromley signed certificate award. How long should he wait before he auctions it, or should he leave it in his will? Sue, I demand to know what your husband did to receive a Good Citizen of Bromley award. And what does it look like? And was it Bodger who actually signed it himself, or did he get a minion to do it? Which is what I would expect. Could Boris Johnson find Bromley with a sat-nav? Come on, Sue, spill the beans. What did your husband do to get a Good Citizen of Bromley award? Inquiring minds are keen to find out. Brenda says the G7 last week has caused hotels and restaurants to close here in Cornwall as the infection rate has jumped significantly.
Oh, no.
Who could have predicted that? What a surprise, says Brenda. This was Boris being cautious. Did you notice that for about a week there, all of his minions went out and used that phrase? We're going to be careful and cautious, because they know that what they had done to visit this plague on us in the first place was an absence of care and caution. By leaving the gates open for the Indian variant to just waltz in here, 20,000 people flew in when they knew they were coming in diseased up to the eyeballs. But in order to, bat any criticism away, they just kept repeating careful and cautious. We're going to be careful and cautious. We're going to be guided by the science. Yes?
No.
No. Anyway, Brenda says this was Boris being cautious as he and his entourage cuddled each other as they drank champagne.
Booze.
And they all huddled together. But the people here, we were bowled over at seeing Boris like a like a walrus in the sea. I picture him, as far as sea creatures go, more like a manatee. No offence. They don't get it, says Brenda. He is totally responsible for this Delta variant here and across the UK by not closing the borders to India immediately out of caution. Yes. It's the absence of caution and carefulness that has visited this on us again and again and again. You know, we got the highest rate of the virus in Europe. The UK now has the highest daily rate of coronavirus infections in all of Europe, overtaking Spain.
Oh, fabulous.
Statistics compiled by the Oxford University-based platform Our World in Data show 107.3 people per million in the UK tested positive for the virus on an average day over the last week. An outbreak of the ultra-infectious Indian COVID variant had pushed Britain's infection rate back up, forcing Bodger Johnson to pump the brakes on the final stage of his roadmap out of lockdown. Roadmap. Yeah, like he's got a plan. I mean, it's not really fair to call it the Indian variant. We should be calling it the Johnson variant, because it's him who let it in, because he was desperate to suck up to the Indian government while he was scrabbling around trying to get a trade deal to wave about as a Brexit bonus. Pah! Fun fact, though, a full trade deal with India will come with higher Indian immigration. I mean, that's at the top of the priorities for the Indian government. They want freedom of movement for their people to come here. 1 in 6 people on Earth live in India. And if that's what your average Brexiter, who says that they knew what they were voting for, had in mind when they voted out, then I'm a Knickerbocker Glory with cream on top. And that trade deal, by the way, which, despite what you've heard, hasn't actually happened yet, it was a small-scale agreement on a few things, is based on £8 billion worth of exports from us to them. 8 billion. As opposed to 300 billion of exports from us to the EU. Still, I suppose the Prime Minister knows what he's doing. And as for COVID infections, the reason that you don't get to go out and play is that the UK is now ahead of all 43 other European countries included in the statistics. We are the worst in Europe. Spain second, followed by Latvia and Andorra, wherever they are. Italy used to be one of the worst. Now has about a fifth of the cases per million as we have. Iceland and San Marino at the bottom of the list. The only countries to have 0 cases per million. 0, as in none. At all. Well done, Bodger. Another tremendous success.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
And as the UK has become the COVID infection capital of Europe, officials have also announced 7,673 more cases per day, an increase of a quarter in a week. Exponential growth, everybody. The number of infected patients admitted to hospital, a figure that lags behind cases by several weeks because of, how long it can take for somebody to become seriously ill, also soared by 46%. Wow. The Bodger variant strikes again. I don't know. Yeah, I think you'd have to say that this government is a clear and present danger to the people of this country. If Bodger's got a roadmap, it's on a sat-nav mounted on a fairground bumper car. Unless you know otherwise, in which case you must correct me. Justin emails, did you just say that you want Timmy Mallett to be Labour leader? I'm not sure he'd be interested. No, I didn't. I said somebody like a mallet, not Timmy Mallett, a mallet, as in hammer, to smash through the thin facade of which we've all become mesmerised by, apart from the good people of Amersham, who are mesmerised no more. But I feel for you, Brenda, because Cornwall, how marvellous. and now it's shut down. Hotels and restaurants have closed because the infection rates jumped significantly. Well, just wait. Wait another week or so, and I'm sure everything will be okay. Or not, as the case may be. Scott says, Bercow behind Labour. I'd back him, even if he doesn't assume a parliamentary role. He's a real good card, though a bit populist. What, Bercow? Populist? He doesn't have the sinister twist, unlike all other caricatures of Britain. I'm looking at you, Boris, says Scott. Yeah, well, there's some caricatures around him, all right.
You're better informed than I am. I don't know anything.
Yeah, chief among them, smug. He always looks like he's had his head stuck in a clamp. Like a bit too pointy-headed. Is there room inside that thin skull for much of a brain? Must be, I suppose. So, they had the... I haven't actually mentioned it hardly at all. This Amersham, Chesham-Amersham by-election thing, and they're trying to explain it away. Oh, it was nothing. Just a blip, don't worry. Senior Conservatives have told Boris Johnson a swathe of seats in the blue wall across the south of England could be at risk after the Lib Dems' shock victory at the Chesham and Amersham by-election. Downing Street came under renewed pressure to ditch Boris Johnson's controversial planning reforms, which many backbenchers are blaming for the humiliating loss of the Buckinghamshire seat. And I know that they're trying to find one thing that they can tweak to make the bad news go away. But if your whole act is to sow discord and divide the nation on the basis of nonsense culture wars and that whole Brexit, us and them stuff, and then they shouldn't be surprised when half the country are repelled. I mean, that's their game. Set one side against the other. And now they're surprised that everybody doesn't love them. Plus, there's this way in which the Conservatives seem to be strip-mining the country, basically taking the wealth of the nation and transposing it into the pockets of their friends and benefactors. I mean, it's just drip, 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 story after story after story. If this country were a car, the Tories would have it on bricks. They'd have nicked the wheels, taken out the engine, and be coming back at night for everything that they've missed. And the planning rules, right up there at the top of the list of shame. I mean, we had Robert Jenrick a while ago, maybe you saw him on the news, standing in front of a row of new houses, telling us how glorious it would be to cover the land with such buildings, and they were the ugliest, meanest little boxes for living that you ever saw. Identikit houselets for hamsters who don't need cupboards or gardens and don't like light. Apparently, I mean, the windows are so small on new build houses because bricks are cheaper than glass. That's actually true. How sad is that? If you just moved into a new build house, the reason that you can't see out the windows without standing on your tiptoes is because it's cheaper to put bricks there than it is glass. And this government don't just allow this creeping disease of hideous developments to scar the country, they positively encourage it by their policy of propping up the housing market with stamp duty holidays and help to buy and shared ownership and mortgage guarantees and all of the rest of it, which doesn't actually help anyone at all, so much as the developers, who by complete coincidence are major donors to the Conservative Party. It seems like the government's planning policy is a racket to prop up house prices to increase developers' profits. I mean, they can literally knock up any old rubbish with no local objection allowed, and a panicked people will buy them with assistance from the government because they see prices going ever upwards, in great part due to that very government policy. And of course, also completely unconnected, homeowners are traditionally more likely to vote Tory. The government aren't helping to buy because they care about you. They're helping to buy because it's in their own interests. They think you'll vote for them if they help you to get on the property ladder. But now there's a twist in the tale. And it sort of gets quite interesting, this twist. What's sort of happening at the moment is turning this whole equation on its head.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Nick Abbott.
Yeah! Dudes! Richard texts, yes, bring back imperial units. 2 and 3 30 inches makes much more sense than 53 millimetres. I'm not sure that's how it works, Richard, but perhaps you're following the science. Annie says, to add to your point in support of Jeremy Corbyn, I had a point in support of Jeremy Corbyn. Oh, that bloke who was saying, it was yeah, that Jeremy Corbyn would have wasted our money, as opposed to the current regime. To add to your point in support of Jeremy Corbyn, says Annie, whereas he would have spent money on behalf of ordinary people, Bodger's wasted billions has almost certainly gone directly into the pockets of private firms owned by, likely, his friends. There's the difference, a huge divide between the two men. Well, I would have thought that's indisputable. But, a lot of people have joined the cult and they will not be dissuaded. Here is an alarming call in Tooting. Hello, Jan.
Hi, Nick. Good evening. Thanks for having me on your show.
Jan.
So I'm bringing up about a bit to the side of what you're discussing, but it involves India. Some latest news from India that caught my attention this week about lions.
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 Mm-hmm.
The magnificent.
Yeah, roaring things. Yes, big teeth.
In India, in southern India, catching the virus, and how I'm trying to imagine what it must sound like. I can't imagine the magnificent lion that roars, coughing from having caught the COVID,
coughing.
I'm thinking the only lions that we may have heard cough are those in Disney films. You know what I mean? Lions coughing and talking. But these lions, it's quite sad, really. They caught it, and a couple of them have died. But they're like humans. I can't
not really.
No, I mean coughing.
I see.
Other
Right.
animals may just they have symptoms like humans: fatigue, loss of appetite, and coughing and things like that.
Right.
But also, coming away from India as well, the other one that caught my attention this week was about the zoos in England or around the world, which are really keeping alive some endangered species. How this is to do with the lockdown rather than just they're not about animals that have caught the virus like in India.
Yeah.
But
are you talking about elephants? Because I read that the elephants are. I was only sort of partly interested in the story, so I didn't really read and take much of it in. But the headline was more or less elephants. People are going to be dissuaded from keeping elephants in safari parks and zoos because it's bad for their mental health. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that's what I'm coming to. It's about
I see, right.
A lot of animals are suffering from the lockdown like humans. They're saying they've got psychological problems because they're accustomed to interacting with all the visitors. They may have
I'm not sure that's true.
1 million visitors.
I don't think that's true.
No, that's what I say. Some of the zoos may have 1 million visitors a year, like the one in Regent's Park.
But animals aren't upset at our absence. They're upset at not having 100 miles to roam about and call their own.
No, yeah, but they've been born in captivity, so they don't know anything else. But
they do. Well, of course they do. It's instinctual.
Well.
Animals don't ordinarily interact with human beings, particularly a lion. If a lion is born in captivity and you go and pet it in its cage, it will eat you, even if it hasn't been taught by its parents that we're walking meat sacks.
But Nick, the animals that I'm thinking that have psychological problems that were flagged up, and there's videos of them online about they're monkeys. And some of them are of the birds or ducks. People will actually talk. They say people talk in the zoos. People will talk to the ducks.
Yeah, talk and squawk and walk like the animals. Yeah, but you don't think the animals can understand them? I mean, all the animals are hearing is wah 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 wah. They're not understanding what we're saying.
Well, yeah, probably not. But their interaction, they can see though. They can see the excitement of the audience, or they've got an audience.
Yeah, but that doesn't please them in any way.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're reading things in human feelings into these wild animals.
I think what they're probably reading is that these weird stick people, stick things that are walking about and you can't actually get to them to eat them, they're keeping us caged here for our entire lives. What have we done? They're probably thinking.
But what about domestic animals? I mean, I know a neighbour who passed away, and their dog cried and cried and cried and cried and cried.
Mm.
You know, animals do have feelings, and don't they? We know elephants have feelings. The
dog cried.
It cried. It wouldn't stop crying. They had to have it put down. It was crying and crying.
Oh, that's nice. How about if they did that to human beings? They put us down when we started crying.
It didn't seem fair, but the dog was pining away for its
right. So they shot it. That's nice.
No, they didn't shoot it. I don't know how they did it, but it was pining away. It was disturbing everywhere.
Well then it definitely needs to go. Yeah.
No, but animals do have feelings.
Yes, which is an excellent reason why we shouldn't lock them in zoos or safari parks.
I agree. But what about
the
endangered species? That they're trying to breed, and they're studying and researching in the ones where there's just so few left. They want to try and breed them in captivity.
Well, like what?
Well, in China it was a panda. In this country, I'm not too up on which one's
pandas
endangered.
Seem to be keen on self-destruction, don't they? They only eat bamboo, which has got so little nutrients in it. They've got to eat for pretty much 24 hours a day. That's all they can do. Eat bamboo all the time, and they mate almost never. It's like pandas don't fancy each other.
All right. We don't have them in this country, but there are some. I don't know. I don't know about.
If there was ever an animal that seemed to be intent on on its own extinction, it's pandas. And yet we're so obsessed with them because they look like teddy bears. Oh, so cute. Get too close to it, Jan. Eat your face off.
No. But there's a lot of animals that are, because I used to the what do you call them, the Wildlife Fund, have lots of projects around the world to protect endangered species.
Oh, sure.
Like the snow leopard.
Right. The snow leopards. Right.
You can adopt them. You know how they have these.
You can adopt them.
Yeah, I adopted a snow leopard.
Right. What did you call it? Snowy.
No, I had a soft toy that they gave me. So, I'm not a kid, but that's what they give if you adopt an animal. You can adopt animals that they have big projects on. Well, I don't know whether they have the projects on now with this pandemic, but they're endangered species. There's so few of them left in certain parts of the world because they hunt them for their skins. They want their skins.
Well, yeah, they do look nice, but we should stop wearing animal skins. But then you get into the whole leather thing, and where does that end? We shouldn't hunt things like that. Cows.
Well, they do, don't they?
But you have to think about poor cows. Cows are people too, And what do we do with them? We slaughter them by the million.
Yeah, which is why I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan for 30 years. Right. I'm a vegetarian for the better part of my life.
But we can agree that I think zoos are fundamentally cruel.
They are cruel.
Yeah, I haven't been to a zoo since I was a child. I would feel uncomfortable going around them. They are prisons for animals. And they say, well, you shouldn't have an elephant and lock an elephant up in a zoo because I think it was a mental health thing, wasn't it? Or it upsets them. Of course it blooming well upsets them.
Yeah, they're very upset.
They're in prison.
Sensitive. No, but they do. When one of the elephant herd passes away, they mourn. They actually go through a stage of mourning.
Well, they shouldn't make too much of a show about it because apparently we'll kill them if they cry.
Don't.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah, but they're researching them though. But the ones that are endangered, I'm going to find out which ones are endangered because they did say I didn't make a note of that. Which ones were actually endangered in this country?
Well, you got a lot of work to do
around England. Yeah. The zoos are about to teeter. They're teetering on the edge because, like theatres and all the arts, they haven't got they're not getting the revenues from visitors.
Right. Well, good thing too. I don't think people should go to the zoo.
What they're going to do with all but they're not going to. They're not going to. What would they do with all the animals?
Well, they better not start crying because we know what happens to them then.
That was a dog. That was a domestic dog.
Oh, well, that's okay then.
So do you think, I keep thinking, what about the wildlife around us? I'm wondering if the foxes, we have a lot of foxes around here.
Oh, God, do we ever? They're not endangered. There's just way too many. I'll tell you what else there's way too many of, is parakeets.
Yeah, we got them here as well. Someone
Those
must have let it free.
squawking, luminous green things have got to go. They are taking over.
Yeah, they have taken over around here.
They don't belong here. Why are they here? Why are we putting up with them? They should be gone. Never mind about crying dogs. Let's take out all the parakeets.
What about pet foxes then? The screeching foxes might start coughing around.
There's too many foxes. Every time I drive home, every single time I drive home, I must pass, or rather they pass in front of the car, about half a dozen foxes. Every single night. They're absolutely everywhere. They're having too much fox love, Jan. And if it wouldn't be so bad if they didn't make so much of a noise when they were doing it.
Disgusting.
Awful.
Yeah, the noise. I mean, I'm just waiting to hear some of them coughing here to see if they catch it.
Right.
Well, it's not supposed to be funny, but it would be, how will the wildlife, what sort of noises are they going to start making? Birds, parakeets.
Right.
Well, they just won't be able to breathe.
That's a pretty offensive thing for a vegan to say.
What's offensive?
For a vegan, pretty awful thing to say.
About foxes?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm just wondering if wildlife are actually being affected by the virus.
Well, apparently so. Yeah, apparently so.
The ones in the wild.
Animals gave it to us, apparently. So it seems justified that we give it right back to them.
But we don't really have much contact with foxes, do we?
Are you kidding me? They're absolutely everywhere. Foxes have pretty much licked everything that you've got outside. They've licked it, they've peed on it, and they've rubbed up against it. If it's outside, then you've got fox stuff all over it.
Mm. Yeah. And you're not allowed to. Yeah. Well, sometimes there's as many as 12 foxes in the back garden.
Yeah. Always put on rubber gloves every time you go outside. Promise me you'll do that, Jan.
Whoa.
Thank you. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, we're not remotely interested in any animal that's who may be in danger of being extinct unless they're cute. That's why we're so obsessed with pandas, because it's so cute, like a teddy bear. Insects, not remotely interested. But I think that our lives depend on insects a hell of a lot more than they depend on pandas. If pandas disappeared from the face of the earth, nobody would be that bothered.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott.
So they opened their big mouths and out came talk. Talk.
Terry emails, can we get back to non-zoo talking now, please? Absolutely, Terry. In other news, Sri Lankan's main zoo on Friday said it was seeking Indian help to treat a lion that tested positive for COVID-19, the first animal on the island known to be infected. The Department of National Zoological... Blimey, imagine being on the phone at that place. Hello, Department of National Zoological Gardens, how may I direct your call? You'd do it once and say, right, that's it, I'm leaving. So the Department of National Zoological Gardens said it was consulting vets of the Central Zoo Authority of India to treat 11-year-old Thor, the lion. Thor. Couldn't they call it something like Dave? Much less threatening. Thor. We are seeking guidance from the Central Zoo Authority in treating Thor. Director General... Oh, blimey, I'm not even going to try that. Oh, all right then. Ishini Wickremesinghe. Yeah. You know Ishini Wickremesinghe, don't you?
No.
Oh, he or she does excellent work. Apparently Thor, the lion, has been experiencing breathing difficulties and refused food, prompting authorities at the Dehiwala Zoo to test it for coronavirus. And some people might think, well, it serves them right for eating us. But of course it doesn't. Poor little lions. Paulasaurus the plumber tweets, all domestic plumbing. This is in reference to Ian middle name Smith's great idea for the future of this country. Bring back imperial measurements. You'd think I'm joking, but that's actually true. I mean, it really is hard to believe, ain't it? Imperial measurements. That's our glorious future. That's what he wants to go back to. The Task Force on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, led by Ian middle name Smith, says that one of their recommendations is that we should go back to imperial measurements. You know, ounces and stones and pounds and quarts. Because it's British, damn it! Oh, please, I can't bear to hear this song anymore. I don't know how Her Majesty stands it. Every time she steps out of the coach, this droning tune pipes up. Awful. Anyway, the plumber says all domestic plumbing is on 15 mil copper and plastic pipe. Imagine the hassle that's going to cause if Ian middle name Smith gets his way. Imperial copper pipe is half-inch and not compatible with the 15mm pipe. Well, we'll just bodge it. Just bodge it, Paul. No problem. Carnforth, hey, Penny.
Oh, hey up, Nick. How you doing?
Great, mate.
Good. I just wanted to say something about the by-election in Chesham and Amersham.
Yes.
And some of the Tories are getting a bit, oh dear, this is not looking good. And I do think it possibly is partly to do with planning. I mean, obviously there's HS2 there, but just planning generally, because, obviously lots of Tory voters live in the country and they don't want, greenfield sites plastering all over in houses.
Nobody does.
But one of the blooming Tory MPs, they should build all these houses in the North and the Midlands then, which made me laugh because it was just, the idea that, obviously everybody that lives in the North and the Midlands just lives in 2 up and 2 down terraces with, whippet in the back and coal in the bath, in the backyard, and coal in the bath and everything. The people don't actually live in nice places in the countryside.
Right.
And there's loads of Tories around here, and we've got a Tory MP, and people don't take kindly to changes in the planning laws because they've already changed the planning laws once and made it easier to get planning. And just near to where we are, actually, they've been trying to get planning for years for a field just down the road, which is in an AOMB, and they've been refused it. But as soon as the Tories slackened the planning laws, they've got planning permission now, and they've built these hideous little rabbit hutches, really.
They are hideous. The housing that goes up in this country should be against the law. It is ugly beyond belief. I mean, it's just embarrassing. It's a national embarrassment. We're going to be stuck with those places for 100 years or more. Look at what they've done at Vauxhall. Holy moly, I drove through that today. I don't recognise it as being Britain anymore, let alone London. It's absolutely unimaginably hideous. It sears the eye. It's so ugly, and they've been able to get away with it, and they're still continuing to build them ever more towers of tiny executive flatlets, one after the next. There's more going up now.
Yeah, but these are little tiny rabbit hutch houses.
Yeah, those are worse.
They're
absolutely the worst.
Yeah, they are. And they're supposed to be detached, a lot of them. But, literally, there's about 4 feet in between the house next door.
Yeah.
They're not really detached. They're just squashed in together.
Yeah.
And they're not really for local people.
They're not really designed for people to live in. The living rooms aren't big enough. The windows aren't big enough. They got no cupboards. They got no garden. It's just a place for desperate people with our help through the government to get on the property ladder because they can see the bottom rung being pulled up beyond their grasp.
Yes, but they're not the people that really need the help round here. We need a few more council houses in the village, because I don't live in Carnforth. I live between Carnforth and the next village. And in the village, they need a few more council houses, definitely, because, but even, if you're not somebody...
Yeah, but the problem with that is that people in council houses vote Labour. People in their own homes vote Conservative, traditionally. That's why the desperation to get people onto the housing ladder is because the Tories see that in the equation, which is fundamentally changing at the moment. I'll get into that in a second. But they see that as a way to secure their votes in the future. Get people on the property ladder and then they'll vote Conservative. That's the equation that's in their mind.
Yes, but I mean, the things that, this Help to Buy scheme thing, I mean, it's really not even helping your average person. It's actually for the sort of the likes of them, their children. They can't even get on the housing ladder now. Even an average graduate can't buy a house round here.
Right, so the conclusion must be that it's not for the people that are buying, it's to prop up the prices of the property market in its entirety. Because if people who own their homes see that the value of their property is going down, then they might think twice about voting Conservative. So that has to be the essence of it. All of this assistance, stamp duty holiday, all of that stuff, it doesn't have anything to do with getting making homes more affordable, because they aren't more affordable.
No, they're definitely not.
They're more expensive than they used to be before they started all of this. So that's not the plan. It must be to maintain the prices, to keep them going ever upwards, so that people will feel that they have a lot to lose unless they vote for the party that they think is going to continue that ever upward trajectory of house prices.
Oh, definitely, and they are shooting up house prices
Ridiculous,
at the moment.
Like assets in general are going up completely disconnected from the basic economic variables. We're looking at the worst recession in history, potentially, and yet the prices of assets are going through the roof. It doesn't make any sense at all, apart from that it's just a reaction to all this free money that's been sloshing around that is going into buying assets, homes, and etc., and so on, which isn't helping you, Annie. It's not helping me. It's not helping anybody, apart from the people that already own those assets.
Oh, definitely, and also their mates, the big builders. Who are funding them.
Well, they also are coincidentally major donors of the Conservative Party. Yeah. All right, thanks, Annie. 0345 6060 973. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
Hello, boys.
A big sack of monkey nuts.
A big sack of monkey nuts. That's what this show is. Paul says, what makes me laugh out loud about John Bercow is that for years the Conservatives wanted him out of the role of Speaker and were probably full of glee when he left. They probably thought the new Speaker would be a pushover, but he's not, as it turns out. Isn't he? Really? Yeah, he got upset the other day and said that, if you don't respect this house, I may chastise you. And if that doesn't work, I may admonish you. That'll teach him. Yeah, that's really got the Tories shaking in their John Lobs. Patrick says, and of the John Bercow, John Rentoul, the political correspondent in The Independent, in the news there, he was saying that, John Bercow isn't the sort of chap that the Labour Party want right now to, beat down the appeal of Bodger and his chums. Well, what's weird is that the good people of the North, the working class people, have put their faith in the most out of touch, poshest group of chancellors that you've ever seen in your life. I mean, Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg.
You're better informed than I am. I don't know anything.
Those are the people that the good people of the North have put their faith in to act in their interests. I mean, they're not just posh. They're like a cartoon's idea of what posh is. They're like a poor person's idea of what rich people are like. They're caricatures, they're so posh. And that's what the working class... I mean, we do have a history of deference and cap-doffing in this country, and it appears that anybody that comes with an accent like that, that supercilious attitude that they've all got, we just fall to our knees before them. Genuflect our faces off, we do. So maybe John Bercow is just the very chap. I think that he could knock chunks out of Boris Johnson in a debate. Because that whole, that act, that thin act that Boris Johnson's got, will only go so far. I mean, you can only wave your arms around and do the boggly eye thing. It only gets you so far. I think John Bercow would run rings around him. Patrick email, but he would be dancing around him on tiptoes. Whereas what I think, and John Rentoul is probably suggesting, is you need more of a mallet just to smash that act. Patrick emails, here is an interesting fact. Well, I'll be the judge of that. He says the clinking of glasses originated in the medieval days when wine was often spiked with poison, as the sediment concealed it quite well. If a host wanted to prove that the wine wasn't poisoned, he would pour part of the guest's wine into his glass and drink it first. Right. Okay. Well, it may be a fact. Interesting fact? I don't know. Tynmouth. David.
Yeah, just three things. One, the Americans...
of 3 things, yeah.
No, just 3 things. The one that the Americans use the imperial, the miles, the gallons, the inches, the feet, the pounds, the ounces. They seem to get along quite happily with it also.
Yeah, well, the rest of the world doesn't, and they seem to be getting along quite happily without it.
Yes, but they get along with it, so there's no...
Yes, but the rest of the world get along without it.
Yes, but we are not being told that we're not going to have the metric. The metric isn't going. It's just the fact that it all started when market traders were fined for buying a pound of potatoes.
Yeah, David, do you want to add up or multiply in 12s and 14s or
Yes.
10s?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
What are
why?
all right? Wait a minute. What are 12? Wait a minute. What are 12 14s? Exactly. 0345 6060 973. Well, he said he wanted to. Mike says, if Burnham ever became leader, I would take my membership card, put it down the loo and flush twice. Well, that's just not being eco-friendly. Just flush once. He would be awful for the party, says Mike. We're in desperate need of recovery, not further damage. Well, why would he be awful for the party? You must explain yourself. And don't flush twice. Not necessary. Ken Livingston once said, this was probably not an original thought of his, but if it's brown, flush it down. If it's yellow, let it mellow.
Disgusting.
But, it's saving the planet. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Yeah, we definitely don't want to hear this again. Definitely not. Steve says, John Bercow joining the Labour Party is probably part of a subtle plan to make him leader. What a contest. Prime Minister Johnson versus Mr. Bercow. Well, it would be a contest, and I would pay a small amount of money to see it or hear it. Because I think Bercow would knock chunks off Boris Johnson. Because Bercow has a felicity with the language, and Bodger is just all about, paw! That. But like I was saying before, this Chesham and Amersham by-election is interesting because, the Labour Party weren't expected to win. It's not their manner at all. It's too cutesy, it's too middle class. But the Conservatives, it is right up their street, that area, and they would be expected to win. But I think what's happening is a twist. is a twist in that tale that homeowners are traditionally more likely to vote Tory, and people outside of cities are more likely to vote Conservative. Inner cities is Labour, and then poorer areas of the country, not middle-class suburbia. But COVID has meant that non-Tory voters, those people in cities who've had microscopic flatlets built for them by those developers who pepper the country with these hideous houses, these developments, the scars on the land. Well, those people in the city, they want out because they've been working from home. And working from home in a tiny 2-bed flatlet, that's painful. So they want to leave. They know that they can work from home now, and they want to do it in a place that they actually enjoy being in, rather than just somewhere they sleep in, which is what inner city flats are. You put up with the tiny little flatlet because it's near to where you work. But if you don't have to go into work anymore, then that connection is severed. And so what's about to happen, it's happening slowly now, which sort of informs the takeoff in the housing market for a certain type of house. Not inner city flats. They're not rising in price. Suburban houses with gardens. Everybody wants one of those. But the people who are going there are the people who have lived in cities. Labour voters. The people who have been suffering through last summer, the heat of last summer in a tiny little flat with perhaps at most a microscopic balcony on which they've got their 2 bikes and some plastic kids' toys. That's the twist. People who've been working from home in a inner city flat want to get out, and they're getting out into Tory territory. But they're not becoming Tory when they leave towns. They're taking their metropolitanism with them. I think this is what may be happening now, which doesn't bode well for the Conservative Party in the future, because those true blue shires, they're turning purple. A little bit of red coming their way. And as the older population fall off the end of life's conveyor belt, which is something that has been exacerbated, of course, by this government's failure to protect them, they're not being replaced by Tory voters. It's pensioners that have given us both Brexit and this Conservative government. It's not the left behind. I was talking about this maybe last weekend. There's this the tale is told that it's the left behind that have voted for this comedy cavalcade of ridiculously entitled chancers to we'll give the old Etonians a go at it. But it's not the left behind, the young and the left behind. It's pensioners. And this COVID thing hasn't been too friendly for the old, particularly because this government has failed to protect them. So it's possible that the Conservatives are peaking right now. They've got the afterglow of Brexit and the glory of the vaccines, both of which are going to fade fast as the consequences of Brexit will emerge, and the fallout from their staggering catalogue of failings on COVID. And people will understand. I think that a lot of people are understanding it already. There's a great pushback